Welcome to this meeting of the Astronomical Society. Our members who are joining via Zoom, and hopefully people will be able to watch this at a later date on YouTube, where we'd had technical problems and have to record it. As Mark's away at the moment, I've come off the subs bench to host tonight's meeting, ably supported by Peter managing Zoom and Will looking after YouTube. Before we come to tonight's talk, a couple of reminders about how to keep in touch and what's coming up in the next few weeks. So our website is the one-stop shop for everything you need to know about the Society, and you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our YouTube channel has recordings of our online meetings which we've been holding during the pandemic. So if there's something you've missed or a meeting you want to attend again, that's the place to go. Just a quick reminder of upcoming meetings. The wait is almost over for Bruce Vickery to give us his solution to the Venus tablets. Saturday the 25th December is the date for this.
I think it's the 24th, Jim. I think it's the 24th that you should have there. It's next Friday.
Oh, so it's not the 25th then. Right. Okay, so the 24th. Apologies for that. Thanks, Bruce. 2 weeks tonight, Friday, 1st of October, we have our regular monthly meeting, and are very much looking forward to the opportunity to return to meeting in person at the Augustine Church to hear about astro landscape photography. We will also be streaming this online. The plan for the monthly meetings going forward is to run them on a hybrid basis with an audience in the church and online. The week after that, there is, for members only, the regular monthly meeting of the Imaging and Observing Group. And our November monthly meeting is on Friday the 5th. And just a reminder that 2 weeks after that, we're joined by prolific comet discoverer David Levy. Now on to the main event for this evening, and I'm delighted to welcome Katrin Raynor-Evans. Originally from Edinburgh, Katrin is a Fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society and Royal Geographical Society, as well as being a member of the European Astronomical Society and Astrospace Stamp Society. She's contributed to the Sky at Night, Stanley Gibbons, and the American Philatelic Society. It would be interesting to learn how many people are in the intersection of those sets. Society members, using Zoom, you can ask questions via the chat function, and Peter will come to you at the end of the talk. I would now like to invite Katrin to deliver our talk, Exploring Astronomy and Space through Philately. And so would you now like to start screen sharing?
Okay, thank you very much. I shall share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to stop my video as well, so I can. Fantastic. Okay, I'll get started then. So hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. As you know, my name is Katrin, and tonight I'm going to discuss what we can learn about astronomy through philately. And I will show you some examples of what stamps exist globally celebrating the subject of astronomy. And this is a perfect example of an astronomy themed stamp. It's one of my favorites, and it was issued by the United States Postal Service in 2017 to celebrate the total solar eclipse that was seen in the United States. And it was the first total solar eclipse seen along a very narrow path across the US since 1918. And it's actually one stamp, but the design is made of thermochromic ink, which means that when heat is applied, the color changes. So you can see here on the left, that is the stamp. The moon is obscuring the sun, and you can see the sun's corona, the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. And when heat is applied to the stamp by pressing a thumb or finger on it, the full moon appears, which you can see there on the right-hand side. And this is actually a real photograph of a total solar eclipse that was taken in Libya in 2006. So the world of stamp collecting is a science and art in itself, and there are so many facets of the subject. This is just a brief introduction. I could talk for a week, so I've just chosen some subjects that I hope will interest you all, get you excited, and give you a flavour of what it's all about. Oh, why is that not moving? There we go. Okay, so my talk, what can you expect this evening? I'm going to just give you an introduction onto about what's so great about philately, and then a brief introduction to philately. Then I'm going to talk about the world's first astronomy stamps and then the global spread of astronomy on stamps. And I'll give you a few examples then of astronomy stamps issued in the UK. And then I'm going to look at collecting and maybe organising an astronomy and philately collection under 4 separate sections. Then just a slide on the future and then how to get started in collecting astronomy stamps. So what's so great about philately? Well, it's a really unusual and creative way of learning about history, geography, science, culture, politics, even animals and comic books, and of course, astronomy and space. There is literally a stamp for anything. And I found this, just to go back. So I just wanted to give you a few examples of some stamps that are out there. So we have this lovely stamp that was issued in Egypt in 1986 depicting hieroglyphs. And in 2001, the Royal Mail issued a set of 4 stamps celebrating the British weather. So there's just one example there. And there are even stamps with a dinosaur theme. And this is a really interesting branch of thematic philately called paleophilately. And we have here a stamp that was issued in Switzerland celebrating chemistry. And again, a really interesting branch of thematic philately called chemophilately. And 4 stamps here issued in 2019 celebrating hip hop culture in the United States. So I found this quote on the internet, which I thought summed up the hobby really well. Stamp collecting is so much more than a hobby. It's a lifestyle, a community, and it is a lifestyle for me now. You know, I'm writing about it and studying the topics, and the community I'm part of online is brilliant. And I've made some fantastic connections. So thanks to social media, you know, we've got Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And it's really enjoying a boom, I think, you know, amongst younger people. So just to give you a few examples of some of the things that are happening on social media, on the bottom left there, we have a guy called the Punk Philatelist, and he has his own blog about stamps, and he believes that stamps are a vibrant expression of pop culture. And this chap in the middle here, Graham Beck, he has his own YouTube channel called Exploring Stamps, and he's exploring the world one stamp at a time. And Philately there on the right hand side, my friend John Simper, he's very active on social media, and he now offers a monthly subscription on a website called Patreon, where you can subscribe to different tiers at a monthly cost, and he will send you packs of stamps and covers and whatever else he has there. So yeah, it's also escapism. It's to a really good way of unplugging from the real world. And for me, it's a way of researching and learning about subjects, especially astronomy. And I love to promote both subjects, astronomy and philately. So I'll just give you a brief introduction to what philately is, because some of you guys may not actually know what this is. So another great example here that you can see, it's a set of the sun science stamps that were issued this year by the United States Postal Service. It's 10 images that celebrate the science behind NASA's ongoing exploration of our nearest star. And the images display common events on the sun, such as solar flares, sunspots, and coronal loops. So what is philately? Well, the word philately is the English transliteration of the French philately. I won't put my French accent on. It's taken from the Greek root word phil or phile, meaning an attraction or affinity to something, and italia, meaning exempt from duties and taxes. And these 2 words form philately. And it's the study of postage stamps and postal history, but it also refers to the collection, appreciation, and research activities on stamps and other philatelic products, such as Cinderella stamps. We've got poster stamps, mail that's been flown in the air, but in aeroplanes. We've got mail that's been transported via the sea, and we also have space mail. So I just wanted to give you an example of a Cinderella stamp, a space-themed Cinderella stamp. So Cinderella stamps are virtually anything that resemble a postage stamp, but they haven't been issued for postal purposes by a government postal administration. So for example, if you've ever had a Christmas card through your letterbox delivered by the Scout Post, they often have a stamp on them, but that is classed as a Cinderella stamp because it hasn't been issued or approved by a government postal administration. So the Cinderella stamps that you can see here, they are the Solar System Rocket Service stamps. Really interesting Cinderella issue by Broadway Approvals, who are based in Denmark Hill, London, and they advertised in boys' comics from 1955 till the 1970s. And you may notice on your screens that the perforations aren't actually perforations at all, but they're just dots printed in ink. And philately also involves more than just stamp collecting or the study of postage. It is possible to be a philatelist without owning any stamps. So for instance, the stamps being studied may be very rare or reside only in museums, such as this. I'm sure some of you may know if you're stamp collectors. This is the very famous 1 cent magenta. It's a very rare stamp. There's only one left of its kind. It was last sold at auction this year for $8.3 million to Stanley Gibbons in London. And when I found out the stamp was going to be auctioned off, I contacted Sotheby's in New York because I really wanted a catalogue, you know, just to learn about this stamp. And I thought it was a great piece of information to have in my collection. And when I was browsing through the pages, I stopped at this page because you may see there on the top middle that there's a comet, an image of a comet there. And I thought, oh, wow, I was like, you know, what's that doing there? So it was very common for owners of this stamp to mark the back of the stamp with a design or their initials. So you can see there on the top right-hand side, the initials SW and the silhouette of a stiletto. And the guy who owned this previously to Stanley Gibbons was a very famous shoe designer called Stuart Weitzman. So yeah, so throughout history, people have marked the back of the stamp, and the chap that marked the back of the stamp with this comet image was a guy called Frederick T. Small. He was an Australian stamp collector. He was an engineer, a tennis official, an executive of the Celanese Corporation, and he bought the stamp in 1940. And I've tried to research why Frederick Small, you know, decided to mark the back of this stamp with a comet, because I thought, well, maybe he's an astronomer, you know, that's really cool. But I can't actually find any connections with astronomy, but I'm still trying to find out because I think it's very, very interesting. So reasons for collecting, just to give you a quick overview of why people collect stamps. Well, a lot of people, you know, they have their own reasons for collecting, and most people do start off collecting and sorting out stamps by country or theme, for example. And you can buy packs of stamps online to get you started, or your local WH Smith, I mentioned earlier, you know, they still sell them. But I think people soon realize that it's a hobby that can quickly get out of control. It can seem very overwhelming, but once you realize your main interest, you can focus on that. So some people, they like to solely focus on the postage stamp gum, and this can affect the value of the stamp, which is a real interest to collectors, because some of these stamps have been printed on the gum side by mistake, and you know, they're sought after by collectors with an interest in uncommon varieties. Well, perforations there in the middle, the red image there, obviously, as you all know, they are a way of separating the stamps, and for the stamp collector, perforations matter, because not only is it a way to distinguish different stamps, but it also, it forms part of the condition of the stamps. And in rare circumstances, a stamp may have different perforations on opposite sides. Some people like to collect for the paper and ink. So the image there on the right-hand side of the blue stamps, to you and I, they're all just the same blue color. But to the philatelist who likes to collect stamps because of their ink color, they're actually all different hues of blue. So that they can be a real interest for some people. And then rarity and errors. So on the bottom left there, we have the inverted Jenny, a 24-cent United States stamp, which was first issued in 1918. And the image, as you can see, the aeroplane is upside down. And it's probably the most famous error in American philately. And only one pane of 100 of the invert stamps was ever found, making this error one of the most prized in all philately. And I wanted to give you an example of an astronomical error here. So you can see there in the middle, we have an astronomy themed stamp that was issued in Czechoslovakia in 1967. And I've just blown up a little bit of the corner image there, as you can see with the arrow. And the engraver of the stamp has actually mixed up 2 letters of the alphabet so that the constellations Lepus and Lupus are transposed. And also people collect because of the theme, and I am a thematic collector because I am collecting stamps with an astronomy and space theme. But it's not just about the stamp. So you may remember when I explained what philately is, I mentioned other philatelic material. So it's not just the stamp that is of interest to collectors. Philatelists like to collect first day covers, which is a postage stamp on a postal card or stamped envelope, which is franked on the first day the stamp is authorized for use. And the stamps are affixed to specially designed envelopes, often with a design of the theme that is being celebrated. So for example, here we have a lovely example of the first day cover that was issued in Canada in 2018, celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. You can see the two stamps there. The one on the left is a photograph of the Milky Way, and the one on the right is the Northern Lights. And to give you a quick example of a cover that was issued in the UK, so the stamps there, they were issued in 2002, celebrating the subject of astronomy. And you can see they've been affixed to this really beautiful cover or envelope with images of the solar system there. And with the growing global celebration of space and astronomy through Philately, some covers made it beyond our atmosphere into space aboard shuttles or Apollo missions. And people who collect these covers are astrophilatelists, and that branch of philately is called astrophilately. And the Apollo 15 postal cover incident, for example, is notorious. Unknown to NASA, the crew of Apollo 15, who were Al Worden, David R. Scott, and James B. Irwin, they agreed to carry around 400 unauthorized postmark covers aboard the spacecraft and subsequently onto the surface of the moon. And upon the astronauts' return, the covers were postmarked again aboard the recovery ship, the Okinawa, and Hermann Seeger, the German stamp dealer involved in the plan, sold some of the covers for prices in the thousands. And when news of the flown covers reached NASA, the astronauts were reprimanded and forbidden to fly in space ever again. So if you guys ever see this on eBay or a cover like this at your local auction house or charity shop, buy it because it's worth a lot of money. And I just wanted to draw your attention to presentation packs. So these typically contain a full set of new stamp issues. So you saw these stamps previously on the cover issued in the UK. And it comprises a folded card containing detailed notes about the stamps, and it has a card with clear strips for holding the stamps in place. And then all of this is then held within a clear sleeve. So this stamp issue here, you can learn all about the Herschel's telescope to the Hubble telescope. And when you unfold the card inlay, you have a beautiful star map there, or star chart, and you can learn all about the stars. So yeah, I think this is a really great example of learning from stamps without opening a book or looking on the internet. And the hand stamps or cancellations alone are of interest to some collectors, and for some astronomy philatelists, there are some wonderful hand stamps available. And these are just simply ink stamps used to cancel the stamps, so they can't be reused. And they come in a variety of shapes and sizes, pictures and ink color. Imaginative hand stamps are eye-catching, and they form an important part of the cover. And the stamps on the covers can be cancelled with the usual first day of issue date stamp at a post office, but often people will send the covers away to a special hand stamp centre to have the stamps cancelled with a special pictorial design, which adds to the theme of the cover. And these are often stamped with a picture and the location of something or someone relevant to the stamps. And sometimes there are up to 40 pictorial cancels available just for one set of stamp issues. And people who collect postmarks, or that is their main interest, that branch of collecting is called markophily. And if you are if that is your interest, then you are a markophilist. So just to give you a few examples here of some pictorial hand stamps, on the top right, we have a pictorial hand stamp that was produced for the Space Science issue in 2012. And on the bottom right there, we have a lovely postmark that was issued for the 50th anniversary of man on the moon, which was produced in America. But not all postmarks are produced to correspond with the first day issue of a stamp. So in the middle there, we have a brilliant cancellation commemorating Comet Bennett in 1970, and it's perihelion on the 20th of March 1970. And then on the left there, in November 2018, a postmark was produced to celebrate InSight, the robotic lander landing on Mars. So I think this is a great example, as I mentioned, where the stamp and the postmark actually have nothing to do with each other. So on the left-hand side there, you can see someone in America actually sent this to me, but the American Postal Service had obviously just produced a postmark. So the guy affixed any stamp to the cover and either took it along to his local post office or actually put it in the post just purely so he could get this postmark on the envelope. And can you sign my cover, please? It's something I say a lot. Autographs from eminent scientists and astronomers form a really special part of my collection. And I have autographs ranging from Dr. Alan Chapman, Ian Ridpath, who is the chairman of the Astrospace Stamp Society, which I will mention later off. And Ian is a very avid collector of space stamps. And I even have Jim Al-Khalili's autograph on a first day cover. So yeah, here we have Ian Ridpath on the left, and he very kindly signed the first day cover for me when I met him at the Cardiff Astronomical Society a few years ago. At the top there, I contacted Pete Lawrence and Chris Lintop from the Sky at Night, and I posted the cover off to them, and they signed it. And at the bottom there, last year, I got in touch with Jocelyn Bell Burnell, and she very kindly gave me her address, and I popped it in the post, and she returned that to me. So yeah, astronomers are very friendly people, and they have no qualms about giving you their address. So, you know, you can send them something to be signed. And the cover here on the bottom right shows an envelope celebrating John Glenn, the first American in space. And I'm not sure if this is an authentic handwritten signature. It could be an auto pen. And an auto pen is a device used for the automatic signing of a signature or autograph. And they're often used when celebrities or famous people get hundreds of letters each day. So for example, during the Apollo missions, you know, really took off. There was a lot of, it was very popular. Everyone wanted the astronauts' signatures, but obviously they couldn't keep up with the amount of fan mail that they were getting, and you know, people wanting them to sign photographs and first day covers like this. So a lot of the signatures that you might see perhaps were produced by an auto pen. And there's a really interesting website out there called the Astronaut Auto Pen Guide. It's a really fantastic resource to check if any covers that you have signed by astronauts are genuine or not. But I have tried to look myself, and to be honest, I mean, you have to have such a trained eye for these things. I'm still kind of none the wiser as to whether that John Glenn autograph is genuine or not. So it all comes together. So all of this is great. You know, I've talked about these 4 pieces of philatelic information. So I've talked about the stamps, the postmarks, signatures, and also on the cachet, which is the illustration on the left-hand side of the envelope. So all of these pieces of information on a first day cover unravels a factual account about an astronomical event, such as the centenary of general relativity. And I'm going to give you an example now. So here we have the cover. It's the envelope. You can see the stamps are affixed. We've got the postmarks on there. We've got some autographs, and we have the cachet on the bottom left-hand side. So each stamp showcases work of Einstein and Hawking. So you can see there we've got Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, gravitational waves, Hawking radiation, 2 black holes colliding, and a black hole. And the silver postmark, well, there's 2 on that cover there. They've been used to cancel the stamps on the 1st of July 2016, which is the date the stamps were issued. And the cachet tells us what the stamps are celebrating, and it also tells us they were launched at Starmus 2016, which is an international festival focused on celebrating astronomy. And the cover has been signed by Professor Kip Thorne and Professor Bernard Schutz. And I met Kip Thorne in October 2019 at a lecture at Cardiff University. He had just opened a new physics laboratory at the uni, and he had delivered a talk there. And Professor Bernard Schutz was also in attendance. And I just recently interviewed Bernard for the Royal Astronomical Society magazine. He had just won an Eddington Medal award for his work in gravitational waves. And Kip Thorne was actually Bernard's PhD supervisor at Caltech University, and they've remained great friends ever since, which I just think is fantastic. So obviously I knew I was going to go there, and I prepared myself. I knew they were both going to be there at the same time, so I packed away this first day cover in my bag, and they both signed it, which was fantastic. So I think this is just a really great example of what philately can teach someone about astronomy. So for example, if I passed this cover to someone who knew little about general relativity or cosmology, they could take this away and do hours of research looking at the details on the stamps. You know, who are these people? Who's Albert Einstein? What's general relativity? What's a black hole? Who's Kip Thorne? So yeah, just you know, it's a small envelope with so much information on it. It's brilliant. And I just wanted to focus on these stamps because I just love them to bits. I think they're very, very beautiful. So the images are printed on iridescent foil, which really makes them unique and eye-catching. And I had great fun researching these because my knowledge of cosmology isn't great. So it's very interesting to delve deep to find out what the words and the diagrams meant. So on the left there, we have Albert Einstein and his equation, the theory of special relativity, which expresses the fact that mass and energy are the same physical entity and can be changed into each other. But someone on a presentation I did a few weeks ago, you know, quite rightly pointed out, I think the capital M there should actually be a small m. Then we have Stephen Hawking, and the equation you can see there is the Birkenstein-Hawking equation. And on the right, we have the famous trousers diagram, which represents two black holes colliding. And on the bottom left, we have a diagram of Hawking radiation. And this diagram is actually based on a blackboard sketch sent to the designers of the stamps from Cambridge University, where Stephen Hawking worked. We have a black hole in the middle there, and on the right, we have gravitational waves. Okay, so the world's first astronomy stamps. I'm hoping that you're all wondering, well, what was the world's first astronomy stamp? Well, the first astronomy themed stamp dates to 1887, when Brazil issued a perforated stamp. It's buff and blue in colour, and it depicts Crux Australis, the Southern Cross, which is an asterism of the constellation Crux seen in the Southern Hemisphere. And here it is. And the asterism is actually astronomically accurate on the stamp, with Acrux and Gacrux pointing the way to the South Celestial Pole, and it's illustrated as if the observer were looking up to the sky from Earth. And stars are a really symbolic part of the Brazilian flag. They represent the constellations in the Southern Hemisphere and show how they were seen from Rio de Janeiro during the early hours of the morning of November 15th, 1889, the day that the country shifted from an empire to a republic. So as you can see, the Southern Cross constellation is a really important part of their history and culture. So it's understandable that it would feature heavily on stamps. And as you will see over the next few slides, the Southern Cross was a favourite to print on Brazilian stamps for almost 10 years, with the colour and size of the stamp evolving over that time. So the world's second astronomy stamp, well, that was issued in Brazil again. 3 years later, in 1890, Brazil issued a further series of perforated postage stamps featuring the Southern Cross, which you can see there top right, in a variety of colours and values. And the asterism featured for a second time in 1890, but this time on perforated newspaper stamps, which you can see there on the bottom left. And these are stamps that were used to pay for the cost of mailing newspapers or periodicals. And for this design, the asterism was illustrated shining above the Sugarloaf Mountain, Brazil's world famous landmark. I think you should be able to see my cursor, but you can just see the asterism there between the writing at the top and a very, very tiny Sugarloaf Mountain there under the letter A. And these stamps were used again in 1898 when Brazil reissued the stamps as newspaper surcharge stamps, and they were overprinted with the year and stamp value, which you can see there in the black and red ink. And the term surcharge in philately describes any type of overprint that alters the price of a stamp. So surcharges may raise or lower the face value of existing stamps when prices have changed too quickly to produce an appropriate new issue, or simply to use up surplus stocks. And a star appears. So Venus, the morning star, appeared on a set of stamps issued in Brazil in 1894, and it's the first stamp featuring a planet. And these stamps are known as Madrugada Republicana, the Republican dawn, and they commemorate the beginning of the Republican period. As I mentioned previously, on the 15th of November 1889, a group of military officers known as Republican Dawn overthrew Emperor Dom Pedro II, with the fall of the monarchy taking place around 8 AM that day. And research of astronomical charts has shown that Venus was visible in the morning sky at the time of the fall of the monarchy, affirming that the bright star on the stamp is undoubtedly the planet Venus. So the Southern Cross in reverse. So jumping ahead to the 20th of June 1930, the 4th Pan American Congress of Architects was held in Rio de Janeiro. And to commemorate this event, 3 stamps, from what I believe, were issued, including this 300 wreath stamp, illustrating the Southern Cross above the Sugarloaf, with the addition of 2 columns or an architrave in the foreground. And if you compare this image to the previous stamps that have been issued, you will notice that the asterism is actually a mirror image of itself. So the mirror image of the asterism on the 1930 stamp was perhaps illustrated as if the observer were looking down on the celestial sphere, as sailors and astronomers would have done when using an armillary sphere or astrolabe for navigation. And if you're unfamiliar with an armillary sphere, then here's one here on a stamp that was issued in Nicaragua in 1985, celebrating the return of Halley's Comet. And after all, the Southern Cross is depicted in reverse on the flag, and an astrolabe features on the Empire of Brazil flag, again tying in with Brazil's nautical history. But I'm not sure why at this point in time they decided to reverse that image. I'm not entirely sure why that's happened. Again, I'm still looking into that, and if any of you guys know, please let me know. And I'll just have a quick drink. So the global spread of astronomy on stamps. So the astronomical theme slowly spread to other countries. In 1930, Italy issued a stamp illustrating flying boats and the Southern Cross, and this stamp celebrates the transatlantic seaplane squadron flight from Rome to Rio de Janeiro. And in 1941, Norway issued a lovely stamp featuring fishing boats and the aurora. And the 50th anniversary of the Mizusawa Latitude Observatory in Japan featured on a Japanese stamp in 1949. And in 1949, the same year, Ecuador chose to feature the equatorial line monument marking the position of the equator on a stamp. And San Marino celebrated the International Year of Astronomy in 2009. And in 1970, Poland celebrated space exploration. And the Hubble Space Telescope featured on a stamp issued in America in 1981. So just to give you a few examples of some astronomy stamps here in the UK, I have shown you the, oh no, hang on, sorry. What's going on? Oh no, sorry, I jumped ahead. So while countries all over the world, from Colombia to Nigeria and Japan and Russia, they celebrated astronomy and humankind's achievements in space, the UK did not start commemorating astronomy in space until much later. In 1966, the Royal Mail issued a stamp depicting a radio telescope at Jodrell Bank. It's bright yellow in colour. It cost 4 pennies, and the stamp was issued within a set of 4, with each image celebrating a different aspect of British technology. And in 1970, the Royal Mail issued a stamp commemorating the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society. It was issued within a set of 5 stamps celebrating anniversaries in the UK. As you can see, it's pink in colour, and the stamp depicts William Herschel holding a sketch of Uranus, which he discovered in 1781. And in the middle there, we have Francis Bailey, and Bailey's beads are actually named after him. And these are an arc of bright spots seen during a total or annular eclipse. And on the right there, we have John Herschel, William Herschel's son, and he's famous for discovering 7 moons of Saturn. And on the right there, we have Herschel's 40-foot telescope, which was constructed in Slough between 1785 and 1789. So yeah, small stamp, but you can glean a lot of information from it. Again, you might be asking yourself, well, who are these people? What's Herschel holding? What's the Royal Astronomical Society? How on earth do you build a 40-foot telescope? So a real fantastic example there of learning a lot about astronomy through philately. So I've chosen 5 examples of astronomy stamps issued in the UK over recent years, just to give you, a taste of what's out there. And you've seen these a few times. So in 2002, the Royal Mail issued a miniature sheet of stamps celebrating British astronomy. And whilst the pictures are very attractive, unfortunately, there seems to be a lack of connection to British astronomy and astronomers, because all the images that you can see here were actually taken using the Hubble Space Telescope. And in 1768, James Cook boarded the ship Endeavour in Plymouth, and he sailed to Tahiti. The trip took around 8 months, and the purpose of the trip was to view the transit of Venus, with the aim to gather astronomical information to measure the solar system. And the Royal Mail issued a set of stamps in August 2018 to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the voyage of James Cook and his companions. And James Cook and Charles Green made drawings during their observations of the transit. And these have been used on this first-class stamp here called the Endeavour Voyage, and they've been superimposed onto an image of the sun. And one of the most interesting details of the drawings is the black drop effect that they observed during the transit, which you can clearly see on the stamp. And the stamp also illustrates a sextant, which was used for navigation purposes during the voyage. And one of the Millennium projects commemorated on stamps was the National Space Centre at Leicester. So unfortunately, well, you may be wondering, where on earth is the Space Centre? Well, unfortunately, it wasn't finished at the time the stamp was released in 2000, so it couldn't be illustrated. So instead, this Millennium project is just represented by a generic picture of the night sky. And in 1987, the Royal Mail issued 4 stamps marking the 300th anniversary of Isaac Newton's Principia. And despite their small size, the stamps are bursting with information about Newton's accomplishments. So on the bottom right there, the 34 pen stamp portrays a satellite, along with Newton's insights on projectile motion and orbits. And just above it, the 22 pen stamp there honours his study of planetary motion through the depiction of 6 planets orbiting the sun, on top of which is an impressive coronal loop. And the 50th anniversary of Patrick Moore's BBC TV programme, The Sky at Night, was commemorated by a set of 6 colourful and attractive stamps released in 2007. And the designs show, for example, the Cat's Eye Nebula, you've got the Saturn Nebula and the Helix Nebula, and superimposed on each image, which you hopefully can see there, is an outline of the home constellation with the location of the object marked. And all objects are identified with a number beginning with the letter C, which is their reference in Patrick's own brand Caldwell catalogue, because Patrick Moore's full surname was actually Caldwell Moore. And I found this out the other day, which I thought was really, really interesting. You know, I was doing some research on astronomy and philately, and I came across this paper called Adjusting Object Glasses of Refracting Telescopes. And as I was reading through, you know, it kind of jumped out to me that German telescope makers have been using postage stamps to separate the objective lenses and apochromatic telescopes. So using stamps actually replaced the need to use mucilage on paper or tin foil, because obviously the stamps, they are very, very thin, and they already have mucilage on the back of the stamp. And I just thought this was a really unusual example of philately in astronomy, and I'm looking forward to learning more about this. Okay, so assembling your astronomy and philatelic collection. So you've probably already noticed that everything from astronomers to telescopes to constellations, they all appear on stamps, and I've kind of given you a real mishmash of examples. And there isn't much point in collecting stamps if you aren't going to learn something from them, and it's why I love collecting stamps with an astronomy theme so much. And I'm not sure if any of you know Margaret Morris. She's based in Glasgow, but she published a paper in 2013 called Astronomy and Philately, where she discussed the 2 subjects. And she's grouped her collection into 3 main groups, and I think this is a really useful way of organising a philately collection within the subjects of astronomy. So I'm just going to give you a few of my own examples under each section to illustrate what subjects we can learn in astronomy from philately in an organised and logical way. And I have added my my own 4th heading or section because the topic didn't fit into any of the 3 that Margaret mentioned, but I think this is just purely because it's classed as astrophilately, and it's a topic that we all know and love, and I didn't want to leave it out. So I'm going to be looking at the observers. So I will give you a few examples of astronomers on stamps and astronomical anniversaries. So I'll look quickly at the Royal Astronomical Society. Then the observables. So again, some examples of our solar system on stamps and everyone's favorite discoveries, comets. And the observations, I will quickly look at astronomical instruments and how, you know, their appearance on stamps. And my 4th and last section will be on the explorers, which is human exploration and achievement. So I'll be looking at the space race and a moon landing celebrated through philately. So the observers. So we all know that astronomy is one of the oldest natural sciences, and this subject has been celebrated on stamps all over the world. Astronomy dates back to the 4th millennium BC. Babylonian astronomers were skilled observers and mathematicians, and they studied the sky and devoted their time to studying the planetary movements and adopted the use of the zodiacal belt. And they also recorded observations of comets and eclipses, and these studies were recorded on cuneiform clay tablets. And this stamp from Austria, issued in 1965, depicts a cuneiform clay tablet, and these tablets show a really good understanding of arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. And the Egyptians, by the 3rd millennium BC, Egyptians had already adopted a 365-day year, and annual flooding of the Nile was determined observing the stars. And this stamp here depicts Hathor, and it was issued in the Central African Republic in 1964. And according to ancient myths, Hathor was a sky goddess known as Lady of Stars and Sovereign of Stars, and she was linked to Sirius. And she was originally a personification of the Milky Way, which was considered to be the milk that flowed from the udders of a heavenly cow. And China, the Chinese have had a very long history of astronomy dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. In a 2nd century tomb, a silk roll was found which depicts comets and is considered to be the first atlas of comets, which you can see on the bottom right. And on the bottom left there, the stamp was issued in China in 1986 and commemorates the return of Halley's Comet. And observations of celestial bodies and scientific discoveries have shaped our way of thinking about our place in the universe. So jumping ahead from the ancient observers to the scientists and astronomers who changed our view of our place in the universe over the last few centuries. Copernicus is a popular astronomer to feature on stamps. He is, or was, a Polish astronomer who proposed that the planets have the sun as a fixed point to which their motions are to be referred. And here he is featured on a Polish stamp in 1942. And here he is again featuring on a stamp which was issued in Hungary in 1973 to commemorate 500 years since his birth. And the stamp there on the left-hand side is actually another really great example of a Cinderella stamp. So if you were to tear that stamp off and put it on a letter, obviously you wouldn't get very far because it doesn't hold a value. And Tycho Brahe, he was a Danish nobleman, astronomer and writer known for his accurate and comprehensive astronomical observations. He was quite a character. In fact, he had a false nose made of brass, which had been cut off during a sword fight. And he formed his own system, the Tychonic system, and his system correctly saw the moon as orbiting Earth and the planets as orbiting the sun, but he erroneously considered the sun to be orbiting the Earth. And Johann Kepler, he was Tycho's assistant, and Kepler was a convinced Copernican and considered Tycho's model to be mistaken. And he is also, of course, famous for his laws of planetary motion. He was commemorated on a stamp, as you can see here, in the Czech Republic in 2009. And the father of astronomy, Galileo, he was an astronomer, an engineer, and a physicist, and he is famous for his use of the telescope and making celestial observations. And he observed the phases of Venus and the 4 largest satellites of Jupiter. And whilst he wasn't the first person to observe the moon, he's probably most famous for making topographical charts estimating the heights of the mountains on the moon. And he was commemorated on a stamp in Ascension that was issued in Ascension, in 1971. And Sir Isaac Newton, he's recognized as one of the greatest mathematicians and scientists of all time. He was born in England and he formulated the laws of motion and made seminal contributions to optics. And he was celebrated on a stamp issued in 1987 in Grenada, and he's illustrated holding the apple that was said to give him his inspiration to formulate the theory of gravity. So just to continue with the observers, you saw the stamp previously, which is a commemorative stamp issued in 1970, celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society. And the Royal Astronomical Society, it was formed in 1820 at a tavern in London, and the society has now grown to 4,000 members and is one of the most eminent societies in the world promoting astronomy and geophysics. And in February last year, the Royal Mail issued a set of stamps to commemorate the bicentenary of the Royal Astronomical Society, and this issue, called Visions of the Universe, has 8 stamps, as you can see, illustrating astronomical phenomena. So for example, we have Comet 67P, the Cat's Eye Nebula, we've got pulsars, Jupiter's auroras, Cygnus galaxy, gravitational lensing, and black holes. And each stamp includes one simple line of text that describes phenomena which has been discovered or investigated by British astronomers and astrophysicists. So for example, on the left there in the middle, the first class black hole stamp displays the text, "Black holes are superdense regions of space." And this is a nod to the English natural philosopher John Michell, who first suggested their existence in 1783, and also to the late famous British professor and theoretical physicist, Stephen Hawking. And these stamps were illustrated by a guy called Robert Ball. As I'm sure you'll agree, the stamps are very colourful in hues of blue and red, and they bring to life these amazing phenomena in a way that photographs certainly could not. And in particular, just to go back to the black hole stamp on the left, this is actually based on the work of a guy called Dr. Ziri Younsi of University College London, who was part of the Event Horizon telescope team that captured the groundbreaking first image of a black hole in 2019. And he shared computer models of his work on black holes with Robert, the guy who illustrated the stamps, to inform the design. And I think you might agree that these stamps are a fitting celebration for the bicentenary of such a prestigious society and the contributions of British scientists who've researched in this field. So just quickly, I just wanted to show you an example of the Visions of the Universe stamps on a special first day cover. We've got Stephen Hawking there on the bottom right on the cover, and a special commemorative 50p coin, which was minted in 2019 as part of the Royal Mint's Innovators in Science series and celebrates Hawking's life. And for this issue, special hand stamps were produced, including there on the bottom left, we've got the original logo of the Royal Astronomical Society, and they have since updated their their logo. I think that was last year, or maybe 2019, I can't remember. And you can see it's got Herschel's 40-foot telescope there, and above it we have a postmark produced which illustrates a black hole. So the observables, what have the observers been looking at? Well, our solar system, it's home to the sun, 8 planets and fascinating astronomical objects, including icy comets. We've got rocky asteroids and dwarf planets. And on the 16th of October 2012, the Royal Mail celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first British satellite, Ariel 1. Images of our incredible solar system featured on 6 detailed stamps, and using imagery taken from various probes, colour and imagination were brought to life, giving us armchair astronomers a close-up view of these mysterious worlds. And each image has a relationship with the UK's involvement in astronomy. So we have this lovely first-class stamp here, which features the sun. And this image was photographed or taken by the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, which was a joint project between ESA and NASA. And the spacecraft actually continues to make observations of the sun's chromosphere, atmosphere, and corona, despite it initially being only a 2-year mission. And planets featuring on the stamps within that set include Venus and Mars are Earth's nearest neighbours. And the images chosen on the first class and 77 pen stamps are examples of just how beautiful these planets are. And the exploration of Venus and Mars have very strong UK connections. So the Venus Express mission was proposed by scientists at Oxford University, and the image taken by ESA's Mars Express probe was the first European mission to Mars, with the UK having involvement in 3 of the 6 onboard instruments. And Earth featured on its own stamp in 1984 when the Royal Mail commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the adoption of the Greenwich Meridian, the world's prime meridian. And the image chosen here on the 16 pen stamp is that of Earth as seen from Apollo 11, with a curved red line of 0 longitude superimposed on top. And I'm sure many of us will remember the total solar eclipse in 1999, probably because it was quite cloudy. But 7 stamps were issued in that year by the Guernsey Post Office to commemorate the eclipse. And these are fantastic set, I think, taking the collector through 5 stages of the eclipse. So we have first and second contact, we've got totality there, and we've got Baily's beads and the diamond ring effect. And some of you may notice that 6 stamps there do hold a value and can be used for postage, whilst the stamp on the end there on the right, again, another great example of a Cinderella stamp. So I'm not sure why they decided not to give that stamp a value. Again, something I don't know, but I found it quite strange. Okay, so comets. Comets have been the cause of fascination and fear for centuries. Originating from the cold, dark outer reaches of the solar system, comets are composed of ice and rock. And we have a lovely miniature sheet here, or souvenir sheet, that was issued in India in 2018 of our solar system. And you can see 2 images of a comet on that sheet. And they originate from 2 locations, the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud. And comets originating from the Kuiper Belt are short period comets, and they can orbit the sun in less than 200 years, whereas comets originating from the Oort cloud take much longer to orbit the sun, often thousands of years, and these are known as long period comets. And there are some really cool and fancy comet stamps out there. So I love the shape of this stamp here. It was issued in Finland in 2014 as part of the Signs in the Sky issue. We have 2 lovely stamps here that were issued in Congo in 1986 celebrating comets. So on the left there we have Comet Ikea Seki, which was seen in 1965, and Comet West, which was seen in 1976. So Halley's Comet is named after the famous astronomer Edmund Halley. It's perhaps the most famous short period comet in our history due to its return period of 76 years. And some of us may even see it twice in our lifetime. I was only 5 when it was here the last time, so unfortunately, I'm still yet to see it. And the comet has been recorded as far back as 240 BC in China, and it was embroidered onto the world famous Bayeux tapestry. And this souvenir stamp sheet here, issued in Bolivia in 1986, features scene 32 from the tapestry, and the comet can be clearly seen on the upper border. And the appearance of Halley's Comet in 1985 was celebrated globally on stamps, and here in the UK, the Royal Mail issued a fantastic set of 4 stamps, which were illustrated by the famous cartoonist Ralph Steadman. The stamps are, they're very colourful, they're quite imaginative. So on the bottom right there, we have a rather disgruntled but comical looking Halley as the comet. On the left, we have an image of 2 comets to represent seeing it twice in a lifetime. Top right, we have Giotto, the spacecraft. And on the left, then, we have an image of the comet orbiting the sun. And the set of first day covers that I really enjoy collecting are those that were issued by the Presentation Philatelic Services in London between, from what I think was 1984 and 1995. And within each cover comes a card inlay, and each inlay explains, that each issue is actually depicting a fine art painting or other collectible, which was auctioned by Sotheby's on the left-hand side of the envelope, so the cachet. So, for example, this first day cover, as you can see, has the Halley's Comet stamp or stamps on it with the special postmark. And there is a very beautiful silk cachet there of a portable refracting telescope manufactured by Peter Dolland, and he was a well-known maker of optical instruments. And the telescope was actually sold by Sotheby's at auction in 1985 for a whopping £22,000. And Hale-Bopp and Neowise. So it's 26 years this year that Hale-Bopp was discovered. It moved across our skies for approximately 18 months. And Hale-Bopp was one of the most observed comets of the 20th century. It was discovered independently by Alan Hale and Thomas Bopp in the US on the 23rd of July 1995, and the comet passed perihelion on the 1st of April 1997. And as far as I'm aware, very few stamps were issued to celebrate this exciting event. But on the 1st of April 1997, the Dominican Republic issued a set of stamps depicting the comet positioned against a tropical pink and yellow sky, which you can see there with its 2 tails of gas and dust clearly illustrated. And in my collection, I have a lovely custom cover commemorating the comet. So custom covers are just simply where people have produced their own covers, if you like. They've had a blank envelope and they've put a design on it of anything that they want. And yeah, they've affixed a stamp to it and posted it off for it to get a postmark. So the cover is postmarked at Cloudcroft, New Mexico on the 24th of March, 1997, which was 2 days after the comet made its closest approach to Earth. And Cloudcroft is the location where Alan Hale first made the discovery, and the image on the cover illustrates the position of the comet in the night sky from the date of its discovery to the date it was last observed in the southern hemisphere. So just a good example here where, again, the stamp has nothing to do with the event. It's purely the postmark that the person who produced this cover was interested in. And for those keen astronomers amongst us, Comet Neowise would have not passed you by this year. It was first discovered on March the 27th, 2020 by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, and the comet's closest approach to Earth was on the 23rd of July. And the comet could easily be seen with the naked eye, even in urban areas, and is now known as one of the brightest comets since the appearance of Hale-Bopp in 1997. And Sark in Guernsey was designated a dark sky island in 2011, and the 10-year anniversary was celebrated this year. So a set of 6 stamps were issued in June commemorating the anniversary, and included a stamp featuring Neowise, which I was really pleased about because, I was wondering, gosh, will anyone ever commemorate, Neowise being in the sky last year? And yeah, I didn't have to wait that long really. So I think it's very beautiful, a really nice photograph there. So the observations, the tools of the observers, how were people observing? So for thousands of years, our ancestors looked to the sky. They observed and named the stars and constellations after animals, objects, and mythological characters. And they would worship the solstices and watch the planets traversing across the sky. And all of these early attempts at recording and understanding the sky have been found on the designs of stamps. So the prehistoric monument of Stonehenge in Wiltshire has long been studied for its possible connections with ancient astronomy. The site is aligned in the direction of the sunrise of the summer solstice and the sunset of the winter solstice. And archaeoastronomers have made a range of further claims about the site's connection to astronomy, its meaning and its use. And it has appeared twice on stamps here in the UK, once in 1990, which is the stamp there on the left-hand side. And these stamps celebrated the subject of astronomy. And you can see on the left-hand corner an illustration of a gyroscope, and on the right corner we have a boat navigating by the stars. And I love the phases of the moon there arching above Stonehenge. I think it's lovely. And Stonehenge featured again in 2005 on one stamp which celebrated World Heritage Sites. And the Nebra Sky disc, this is a bronze disc, it's blue and gold in colour. It was found in Germany in 1999 by metal detectorists. And these symbols are interpreted generally as the sun or full moon. a lunar crescent, and we've got some stars there, including a cluster of 7 stars, which is interpreted as the Pleiades. We have 2 golden arcs along the sides there, and they're often interpreted to mark the angle between the solstices. And astronomers or historians think that perhaps these were added later on. And a final addition, which is another arc at the bottom there, surrounded with multiple strokes of uncertain meaning, variously interpreted as a solar barge with numerous oars, or it could be the Milky Way, or maybe even a rainbow. An archaeologist places their origins in the 1st millennium BCE, and the disc may be an astronomical instrument. And the disc featured on a postage stamp in Germany in 2008, which you can see there, celebrating German archaeology. Another astronomical instruments that have been attributed to watching and recording our skies include the astrolabe, the armillary sphere, but perhaps the most important of all is the telescope. We have a lovely stamp here with a telescope on it that was issued in Sierra Leone, commemorating the 450th anniversary of Copernicus's death. So observatories, telescopes are often housed in observatories, and in 1921, the first stamp depicting an observatory was issued in central Lithuania. It's produced in 2 forms, you can see there on the top left, perforate and imperforate. And the image on the stamps displays the Poxabut Observatory, named after the astronomer Martin Poxabut, famous for his observational work and for computing the orbit of Mercury. And the observatory theme continued. In 1948, the US printed their first astronomy themed 3-cent stamp with an image of the Palomar Mountain Observatory. And the stamp was issued to commemorate the observatory's opening. The observatory houses the Hale telescope, a 200-inch telescope named after George Hale, a famous American solar astronomer, well known for his work on the discovery of magnetic fields in sunspots. And the reflecting telescope was the largest at the time and launched new developments in telescope design, including its mountain mirror. So the last section now, the explorers. From July 1957 to December 1958, scientists from 67 countries participated in various Earth science projects as part of the International Geophysical Year. And to mark this occasion, the US Post Office issued a stamp featuring a striking illustration of the sun, which was in the most active phase of its 11-year cycle, solar cycle 19, which was the 19th solar cycle since 1755. And also depicted as a section of Michelangelo's famous Sistine Chapel painting, The Creation of Adam, which is a nod to our natural curiosity and desire to understand our place in the universe. And the International Geophysical Year came at a time when the Soviet Union and the US were locked in a heated race to be the first nation to go to space. And the Soviet Union succeeded on the 4th of October 1957, when Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, was launched into low Earth orbit. And the satellite survived just under 3 months in space before falling back to Earth and burning up in our atmosphere. And the Soviet Union issued its first Sputnik stamp on the 4th of November 1957, and the 40 kopeck perforated stamp. It's a simple design, as you can see, it's blue and grey in colour, and it illustrates the satellite orbiting the Earth. And the launch of Sputnik has been celebrated globally on stamps, including Romania, Cuba and Korea. And if you were to search for Sputnik stamps, you will be inundated with them. There's thousands out there. And after the successful launch of Laika, the space dog, aboard Sputnik 2 on the 3rd of November 1957, there she is there on the stamp, a further triumph came for the Soviet Union on the 12th of April 1961, when Yuri Gagarin was launched aboard Vostok 1, and he orbited the Earth for 108 minutes before he returned to Earth. And Gagarin was the first man in space and the first man to orbit the Earth. And not one to shy away from celebrating their achievements through Philately. A plethora of stamps from the Soviet Union commemorating this momentous event exists, including this rather wonderful 10 kopeck stamp, which is a really great example of Soviet space propaganda. It's illustrating Gagarin looking to the stars as Vostok 1 shoots off into the sky above a silhouetted skyline with the date of the launch in the rocket's wake. But whilst the Soviet Union blazed a trail into space, the USA was successful in their own firsts. And on the 20th of July, 1969, the crew of Apollo 11 were the first to land on the moon in their lunar module, the Eagle. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped onto the moon on the 21st of July. And needless to say, there was an explosion in the issue of stamps and memorabilia celebrating this milestone. So on the top left there, we have a single 10-cent stamp, which was issued in September in 1969 and designed by a chap called Paul Corley. And it was issued to celebrate mankind's historic visit to our celestial neighbour, and it illustrates Neil Armstrong setting foot on the moon, embarking from Eagle. And believe it or not, the engraving plates for the postage stamp were actually carried to the surface of the moon by the Apollo 11 astronauts, and it now resides in the National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. And you may be wondering, who is Paul Corley? Well, he was one of the first 8 artists chosen by NASA in 1962 to document the American space program's Project Mercury. And he's just had this most incredible space art career, which has spanned more than 40 years. And he's covered Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and space shuttle missions. And he was actually the only artist present with the Apollo 11 crew on the morning of July 16th, 1969, as they prepared for the historic launch to the moon. And in 1989, the 20th anniversary of the moon landing, the Postal Service asked Paul's son Chris, who is also a very famous artist and stamp illustrator. So they asked him to design this $2.40 priority mail stamp, and they asked Paul to design a first day cover cachet, the image on the left, for the issue. And I'm very lucky to have in my collection this first day cover, which has been signed by both of them. And in 1994, for the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, Paul and Chris jointly designed 2 US stamps commemorating the event. And on the right there, you can see we have a 29-cent commemorative stamp, and on the left, a $9.95 express mail stamp. So just a couple more slides, guys. So the past couple of years have been no exception to the issue of Apollo 11 stamps. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, the United States Postal Service issued 2 vertical forever stamps on the 20th of July 2019. Very simple design. The images depict the iconic photograph of Buzz Aldrin taken by Neil Armstrong and the Apollo 11 landing site there on the right-hand side, which you can see on the moon. The Sea of Tranquility is marked with a dot. And the Isle of Man Post Office kept the Apollo theme going in 2019 with some really beautiful stamps. They released a set of 8 fantastic stamps to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. And this set, called One Small Step, explores 50 years of lunar exploration. And it tells a story of the first 12 Apollo missions. And they depict famous images, including mission control at NASA, which is just top row, second from the left there. We have the famous image Earthwise on the right-hand side, taken by William Anders during the Apollo 8 mission, and an image there of the first footprints on the moon. And I just love the details of these stamps. Around the perforations are famous quotes from people involved in the missions, including President Kennedy and the astronauts from each mission. And each stamp features the map coordinates of a place relating to the theme of each stamp. So for example, here, this Project Apollo stamp on the left vertical, you can see that the stamp displays the coordinates of Rice Stadium, where Kennedy delivered his speech announcing the Apollo program in 1962. And on the right vertical there, you've got his famous quote, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade." Okay, so just a quick side, the future of philately. Well, we've seen that the celebration and commemoration of astronomical achievements, technological advancements and discoveries has produced an endless amount of stamps, covers and postmarks, and we have some fantastic events to look forward to. But obviously Perseverance is already there, and we did have some lovely postmarks produced in America this year and last year, I think it was. We've got the launch of James Webb Telescope, hopefully in December, to look forward to, and ESA's Solar Orbiter, which I think will be making its close approach to the sun in November. So yeah, I'm really hoping that there's going to be some stamps and postmarks produced for these. And it's a really exciting time for philately, and I aim to promote and teach it as much as I can. So how do you get started? Well, very obvious, just start your research on the internet. Loads of auction websites out there. We've got eBay, Del Camp, there's one called Colnect, and we've got Hip Stamps. Type in what you fancy, whatever theme you want. Like I said, Sputnik, if you typed in Sputnik, you'll be inundated with stamps there that you can buy, or join an astronomy stamp society. So on the bottom left there, I am a member and committee member of the Astrospace Stamp Society. We are a small society in that we have 60 members, but they are spread out all over the world. And we produce a quarterly magazine, I think it is, called Orbit, and it's usually about 40 pages long, and it's packed full of information and articles about astrophilately, new stamps, old stamps, covers, anything that's relating to astronomy and space, really. And we have the American Philatelic Society, a fantastic bunch of people We've got the American Topical Association. Yeah, so lots of
5
societies
minutes.
to get you going. And we also have books, catalogues and magazines. So the 2 images on the right there, that they are books. We've got one called The Race to the Moon, chronicled in stamps, postcards and postmarks by a guy called Umberto Cavallaro, which is brilliant. And my favorite book there, Stamping Through Astronomy by Renato Ducati. And yeah, Stanley Gibbons produce catalogues every year. So yeah, get stuck in. You won't be disappointed. And thank you very much. And if you've got any questions or want to chat to me, here are my contact details. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you rather.
Well, thank you very much for that, Katrin. That was a fascinating tour of these sort of mini works of art.